Good evening, everyone. We are so sorry for our slight delay due to some technical difficulties. Zoom is down, I think, for many people across the country or some kind of issue. So we're grateful that we're up and running and we get to talk to you all tonight. So thank you so much for joining and for your patience. My name is Allie Steeple. I'm the director of the Regeneron Science Talent Search. Been in this role for about 12 years, and this is our second webinar of the 2024 application season. I'm joined here tonight with my colleague Elaine Edwards, who I will allow to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elaine Edwards, and I am the Senior Specialist for the Regeneron Science Talent Search. It is so awesome, again, to have you all with us at our second webinar of the 2024 application season. And we're so excited to talk to you about leadership in STEM today.
That's right. We're also so pleased to be joined by some special finalist guests who we'll introduce in a few minutes. First, we're going to jump right in today's topic, which is STEM leadership. The goal of the Regeneron Science Talent Search is to identify future leaders in STEM. And sometimes people ask us, what does that really mean? So today we're going to talk about what we mean. And when we say Regeneron is looking for leaders of tomorrow, and discuss this bigger question of what STEM leadership really is and what we hope it looks like in the future. So let's get started.
Regeneron STS, as you all know, is seeking future leaders in STEM, but you might have wondered what that really means. For us, it means that we are looking for students with a really demonstrated passion for science, but who also stand out among their peers and in their communities as leaders. It is important to note that there is no one definition of a leader. Students can demonstrate leadership in many ways. A great way that you can get started is to really think about the traits that you associate with a good leader, and then list out the ways that you demonstrate those traits in your own life.
Exactly. And then it's time to put all of that into your application. There are a few places in our application where you can show your leadership skills. One is in your recommendations. Make sure that you choose supportive adults who can speak to your abilities both as a learner and as a leader. The second is in your essays. This is your chance to tell us in your own words about yourself. Questions about your potential, your greatest accomplishment or challenge, how you overcame that, or even just about you. These can be great indicators that are a great place to tell us with an even fuller picture of who you are, how you show leadership, and other amazing aspects of your identity. The science research description in task 4 is for telling us all about your research project. But you can also use this as an opportunity to tell us how you led through your research project, through the execution of your project. Where we ask for your contributions to your project is really the bulk of the application. And you can want to take care to spend time here elaborating on the steps you took to make your project the best that it can be. So sometimes leadership is about initiative, and that's a great place to demonstrate where you made some initiative. But it's also really important to be honest about your contribution and the help that you received. Where's the balance there? One of the hallmarks of a great leader, in our opinion, is that they credit those who've helped them along the way. You don't need to have done everything yourself. In fact, that would be kind of rare and weird in a lot of fields of science to fly totally solo, right? So you don't have to have done everything yourself to be a great leader in your project. Being a great collaborator is also very important and sometimes a hallmark of a leader as well. Maybe a mentor gave you your research question, but you emailed the author of a paper for clarification or chatted through some aspects of your project with a family friend. All totally fine, but telling us about those people who've helped and supported you, maybe where you took that idea, that helps us both know your contribution and then also giving people credit, which is really important. Lets us know it's really yours. One thing that helps with this task especially is to brainstorm all the steps you had to take to get where you are now. This will help you to identify moments in your research journey that stand out as especially reflective of your leadership abilities so that you can mention them in your application.
All right, so next up, we have another great tip, which is just to assess your activities. So another great section of the application in which you can really show us that you are a leader is through the items that you share in this activity task. Allie, if you wouldn't mind hitting that first bullet point. All right. So one thing we like to say a lot about our activities is that they are crucial for helping us understand what you value and how you spend your time. Part of this is it's really important to note that we are not necessarily looking for your most impressive accomplishments. We're instead thinking about where you are investing your time and your energy each week. Important to note here too that we're also not looking for the most activities. It's okay to demonstrate depth versus breadth and vice versa. So that's your investment in one thing versus your investment across many things. Both are totally fine. So if you're really passionate and into just one or two things, that's awesome. And it's also great if you are just a little bit involved in a lot of different things. Again, it's just important for us to know who you are as an individual and who you are as a leader. And so on our next slide, we will share just a couple of ways that we have seen students demonstrate leadership in the past. You can be a captain of a STEM club, an athletic team, maybe a music group, or a senior member of other extracurriculars. Things like holding a job or taking on extra family responsibilities are a great way to demonstrate your leadership in your personal life. Other things like championing a cause or tutoring classmates, or even just the initiative and innovation you've shown in your research process. These are just a few ways that students have shown us that they have been leaders, but you can definitely show it in so many additional ways as well. This is for sure not an exhaustive list. All right, and important as we note here as well that leadership in STEM is great, but you really don't need it to qualify. You're absolutely able to show leadership in other areas of your life as well in order to be a competitive applicant. So again, same situation where it is totally fine to have that, but absolutely not required.
Yeah. What it really comes down to is we're looking for potential. We know that not every student has opportunity to even be in a STEM club at their high school, right? Or maybe because you are spending your time with other types of obligations, family, religion, whatever it may be, you can't be in as many clubs. And so showing leadership in different areas, that's one reason that we look for that, right? It doesn't have to just be STEM leadership. If you also are great in your STEM classes and have a great research project, but really it is all about finding those small and big ways that you can show your leadership potential. Here are a few more examples, this time from past finalists. These are just a few ways that they chose to show leadership in their own application materials. And you can see that while they chose to include a wide variety of activities, all of it helped us to understand them more fully as individuals and as leaders. But we will let them tell you about that a little bit in their own words. Today, we have several finalists from the class of 2022 and 2023. We're excited to get to see them again and learn how they're doing and their views on STEM leadership, what makes them a leader and what advice they might have for you. I'll allow them to introduce themselves and where they're from, where they are now in school, what they're studying, and then we have a few questions that we're going to ask them. At the very end of this session, we might have some time to take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to leave them in the chat and we'll visit that at the end of our list. All right, Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing screen so I can see all my friends here. It's nice to see so many familiar faces, Neil, Jason, and Lavanya. I hope you all are doing well. I'll let you introduce yourselves and, like we said, tell everybody where you're from, where you are now in school and what you're studying, and then we'll round robin a couple questions for you guys. So Neil, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so my name is Neil Nadgal. I'm from Saline, Michigan, which is right outside Ann Arbor. And I actually go to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So nice to be close to home. I'm actually at home right now. And I'm a biophysics and statistics double major. And I'm really looking forward to diving, like biophysics was where my project was. And I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into that and hopefully pursuing graduate school in those things.
Awesome. Thank you, Neil. Jason, why don't you go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Wang. I am currently a student at MIT. I'm originally from Brentwood, Tennessee, which is very close to Nashville. And I am planning on studying biological engineering. I was very lucky to have the chance to do cell biology research in high school, and I was on the basic sciences area, which is much more investigating fundamentals of science. But I hope through learning some engineering principles that I can be able to take those and put them into use to help health.
Awesome. And Lavanya.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Lavanya, and I'm currently a student at Georgia Tech, and I'm studying computer science, but I'm originally from Melbourne, Florida.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And we apologize to the audience earlier for some of these Zoom technical issues that I think a lot of people are experiencing tonight. The first question I'm going to ask, since you all were successful in this process as identified as STEM leaders by us, but what do you think it means to be a leader in STEM? Maybe we can start it off with everyone answering this question, and then we'll pass it around after that, maybe in the same order. So Neil, you can go first.
Yeah, so I think being a leader in STEM and almost anything, I think the greatest quality you can have is the ability to bring people together. And I think that's especially important in STEM, in that in this day and age, very few big ideas are made in isolation. Almost every major advancement in STEM is made from people coming from different walks of life, putting together their ideas and kind of coming out with something that is a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. And to me, I think cultivating that is the most important characteristic of a STEM leader. And a STEM leader should be someone who encourages diversity in STEM, someone who knows their strengths and also knows their weaknesses, and knows who to go to kind of fill in those weaknesses, and can pick people that complement each other. I think a STEM leader needs to be knowledgeable in some areas, but also have the humility to say that they're not knowledgeable in some areas. And I think that can be just as important. I think it also means that you have to be dedicated to STEM and dedicate what is probably a large portion of your life toward the advancement of STEM. I think most people who become very successful have invested years and years of their lives into kind of research or whatever they do in STEM. And I think you have to be willing to make a large time commitment and willing to make not just a time commitment, but a personal commitment to STEM. And I think, and a personal commitment to continuing to learn. And I think the last thing I'll say is that to be a leader, you have to be a student. You have to be someone who's always willing to learn. I think anyone who says that I've learned anything there is to know, I think that's one of the biggest downfalls you can have. I think you should always be willing to accept that even in something that you might be the foremost expert in the world on, there's always something you can learn. And I think looking for what is the next thing I can learn, what is the next thing I can explore, is a super important quality.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that Neil said. But I also want to add on that, at least from my experiences, I think that being a leader in STEM means being able to fight for what you believe in and also for being persistent in your ideas. I think that when you're in science, you're working with a lot of extremely smart people who have, very strong beliefs. And as a scientist, ultimately, you have to stand up for the truth. And as a leader, you also have to stand up for the truth. And so I think that that's, to me, at least, that's a big part of being a leader. And some of my challenges were in finding my own research project. And so I definitely think that, being a leader can also mean being persistent in trying to find leads to do research. I think that for a lot of kids who don't come from schools that have established research programs, and maybe come from rural or historically non-STEM focused areas, being a leader can just be starting that initiative of finding a research project, and that can really inspire others around you to want to do the same thing too.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both Neil and Jason said. Another thing that I also wanted to say was probably definitely being passionate about like what you are a leader specifically in STEM is, because I feel like if you're not passionate, you won't be able to focus on like what you're learning and like keep going. Another thing, what Neil said was like, you kind of have to be open to like keep learning. And I totally agree with that, because another thing in STEM is like, it's not always just focused on one thing. Like it's very, very interdisciplinary. And for that, I feel like you're going to you're really going to have to be like open to learning a lot of new things.
All really great answers. Thank you all for sharing. I think this is also a question we're going to pose to each of you. But we want to know, why do you think it's important for the field of STEM as a whole to have diverse leadership? And what really does diversity in leadership mean to you?
Okay, I can start. In my opinion, I think I kind of touched on this in my last answer, but I can talk about it more in the sense that, excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold, by the way, so I apologize if I have to like stop or something. In my opinion, a lot of STEM is created from people bringing different ideas together. And I think that it's very difficult for one person to look at a problem and see every single different way to approach it. And I think the way we kind of build up our approach to problem solving, a lot of that comes from our past and our past experiences. And that's exactly what diversity is bringing together people with very different past experiences to come together and collaborate to work on a problem. And I think that all of the power of problem solving can be exponentially magnified when you have people from totally different walks of life who have learned in totally different ways, who see the world in totally different ways, and who will likely see your problem in totally different ways. And I think it can be amazing what can be accomplished when you bring together those different views and see how those views fit together to form a much more complete picture of a whole. When you have little pieces, each person can contribute different pieces. And I think by encouraging diversity in STEM, we're encouraging exactly that, in that people will come together, and hopefully as diversity continues to increase and we continue to make greater efforts to increase diversity in STEM, we can see even more of that, and kind of the rate of STEM advancement will grow even more.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, since science is all about discovering the truth, it's much easier to discover the truth when you have people coming from a lot of different backgrounds, looking at the problem through different lenses, as Neil mentioned. So I completely agree with that. I would also say that the reason why diversity in leadership in STEM and just in STEM in general is important is because, it's inspirational to see people like you succeeding in the field. And I think that, when you look at some areas like STEM, where historically there's just been one group of people that have succeeded in STEM, it's really hard to see yourself in STEM. So to be able to have a role model or someone who's at a high level who looks like you or comes from the same background as you, it really helps make you think that you can do it too. That's something that's really important to me. I consider myself a STEM leader because I came from kind of a state that we're not famous for research or like having the most outstanding STEM programs, but I really hope that by being a Regeneron finalist that I can inspire other people who maybe also come from relatively rural areas to want to pursue research because they can be a part of the STEM community as well.
Yeah, and so I also think that, like, as I said before, like in STEM especially, it's really important for things to be very like interdisciplinary, and for that, I guess it's very nice to have a very diverse like field of people, especially like in terms of like leadership and stuff. Mainly because especially after you like share ideas and like talk with other people, I think that in general you can just probably make like a better conclusion or just make better things after having something very diverse.
Yeah, all also very good advice and great to have multiple perspectives on that. Our next question, we know our entrants look to you, the former finalists, as role models, or maybe they want to see themselves in your shoes in the future. And so tell us a little bit what each of you were like in high school. I know it wasn't that long ago, but it might be fun to hear about some of your favorite activities you were involved in, or ways that, well, the next question will ask specifically about leadership or STEM leadership, but it can come up here too. So tell us what you were like back in the day.
Yeah, so I was very much a STEM oriented student. I tried to take as many advanced science and math classes as I could. And I started taking dual enrollment math at the University of Michigan, which is like next door for me. And I spent a lot of time, a lot of my free time kind of just for fun reading things and math and bio and physics. And I just very much enjoyed absorbing information from STEM outside of the general curriculum. But outside of that, I tried to not just be STEM focused, because I think a trap a lot of people fall into is to be very unidimensional. And so I think it's important to kind of branch out as well. I have a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, which I think Taekwondo is great for a lot of things. It teaches you discipline, it teaches you focus, and you get physical strength and activity from it. I also was the captain of my quiz bowl team at my school, which I really enjoyed playing quiz bowl and still enjoy playing quiz bowl. I just joined the quiz bowl club at Michigan. And I found that as a way to kind of meet new people from very different walks of life. And kind of when I went to like the national tournaments, for example, you have people from all over the country coming, and all are interested in these topics that are not necessarily all STEM, but everyone has the same kind of burning passion to learn. And I think that was really cool. Outside of that, I also worked as a teacher's assistant to special needs students, and did that over a summer as well, kind of to preserve continuity of education. And I worked as a tutor to improve English education in Sri Lanka, and I continue to do that as well. Those are just kind of some of the things I did, and I know that everyone's profile applying to this will look absolutely different. And I know that when I was at the stage of applying, I very much felt that what everyone had done was far more impressive than what I had done. And I think my biggest piece of advice would be, don't think that, because it is very hard to tell from a given frame of reference where you rank. And I think if you have the passion for STEM and you have the passion to learn, you definitely have a good chance to succeed in Regeneron and in science in general.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I guess I shouldn't say was, I have been and I'm still am a swimmer. So my days were mostly, going to school and then swimming and training. And I'm actually still swimming at MIT right now. And I had always loved science. And so like Neil, I took the hardest science classes that my school offered. But then senior year, I guess near the end of junior year, I ran out of science classes, like upper level science classes to take. So I kind of wondered like, what's next in my STEM education? And so that was how I discovered research, which really changed my life. And so, I would run to the lab after practice. I would do some experiments. And the nice thing about working in cell biology is sometimes you have downtime when you're like waiting for something to incubate, or you're waiting for like a step to run so I could get some homework done. But yeah, so I was really big into swimming and research. And then outside of that, I have a very personal commitment to STEM education. So I served on the youth leadership board at my local science center, and it was really fulfilling for me because I felt like I got to use my knowledge for something good, which was teach other people about science, not just doing science for myself. And also teach people to appreciate science, the beauty of it, and how it can be found in even the most simple and ordinary things in our lives. And I just think that, the world as a whole will be a better place if more people understood science. So those were some things that I did in high school, and I'm still continuing most of those things to this day. So yeah.
So for me, I took a good amount of pretty rigorous science classes and math classes. I didn't run out of anything. I just had like the normal classes until my senior year. Outside of high school, I played a lot of tennis. And I would probably go to the courts like probably 3 times a week. No, then that was probably what occupied most of my weekends, and also like tournaments and things like that. I'm also a really big runner, so I'd like to run. So like not like as a sport, but just like because I also did a lot of music and singing, and I would like always be listening to music, and I like any type of music, like Bollywood, Hollywood, like and like classical, like anything. But yeah, and then in terms of like STEM and like volunteering, I did have a club where I was able to teach some of the kids in my neighborhood about like electronics and circuitry, because I definitely felt like that was one thing that was not, very emphasized in schools. And obviously that's not a class that like kids in elementary school can take. So I did have a lot of fun with that.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. And I'll let Elaine ask the next question, but I wanted to comment here on 2 things. One, the point of us asking this question for all of the entrants who are watching is not so that you can look at our friends here and say, this is the formula, right? Like I have to do these exact activities and then maybe I'll be an STS finalist. Instead, I hope what you noticed is all the different activities that they did. And also a common theme I observed here, I don't know about you, Elaine, is curiosity, right? Like the extra classes from Neil and Jason getting into research and all of the music and everyone that you did, Lavanya. And so I think that is interesting because really that's a great quality in a future STEM leader, is to be curious, right? So Elaine, you can ask the next one.
Absolutely. And that is such a good takeaway. And it actually leads pretty perfectly into our next question too. You all touched very much on the kind of the activities that you did as high schoolers. But I think I want to get a little deeper, and I'm kind of curious as to how you feel that in those activities, you really demonstrated your leadership potential in high school, or even just leadership in general throughout your lives. What were some traits that you felt that you were emphasizing, and how did you really approach emphasizing those in your applications?
Okay. I feel like I say this a lot, but I say it a lot because it's true. I think the biggest thing you need to be a leader is to be passionate. And I think that is something that you demonstrate in your activities. And that is also something that you can demonstrate very nicely on your application. For example, I was the captain of my quiz bowl team, and I've been doing quiz bowl since 6th grade. And I've done it for the sole reason that I just absolutely love playing quiz bowl. Like it is just one of the joys of my extracurricular experience to be able to go play in tournaments, meet people. I just love doing it. And that's how I approach leading the team as well. I really try not to be like, oh, we need to win this tournament, or oh, we need to come here. It's like, I really tried to make sure that everyone felt that we were here to have fun, and that was basically our singular goal. Of like when we go to nationals, for example, that is a very competitive tournament, and there are teams there who are a lot better than us, who are a lot more practiced than us. And I think it's important for a team like us to go there with no goal other than just saying we want the experience and we want to have fun. And I think the same kind of in the same kind of vein, you can talk about that passion in your application as well. Like in an application that asks when they ask you to describe some of your leadership activities, you talk about what you did, but you talk about what you did in a way that very clearly conveys how much you care about it and how much you enjoy doing it. And leadership should not be something that you do for the sake of leadership. Leadership should be something that comes rather naturally, something that you're so invested in that you naturally become a leader. And I think that's kind of the same thing in some of my other leadership activities with another thing that I just absolutely love to do is to teach. And so I taught special needs students because I really felt like after I was like, I want to try out this class. And after working with them, I really felt like I was able to make a very special connection. And that's another thing that I felt just very personally touching was to make that connection with the student. And I think using that as something that motivates you and drives you forward as sort of just like self-actualization, but also something that you can put in your application is to talk about why you do what you do. And the reason should not ever be, I do what I do because I want a certain end goal. It should always be, I do what I do because I enjoy it, and I do what I do because it's just something that gives me great pleasure. And I think that that's the biggest advice I can give about how I demonstrated STEM leadership in my application and how I think you can do that in yours, because I'm sure a lot of you have activities that you just absolutely love to do. And I think writing about that is one of the best things you can do for your application.
So one way that I really think I demonstrated STEM leadership was because, as I mentioned before, research in the area that I lived in, Brentwood, Tennessee, is really just not a thing that high schoolers do. And there's just this kind of perception that high schoolers are not designed to be doing, high-level science, and that we should stick to the high school classroom. And so when I tried to find research opportunities, to my surprise, there were none. And so I kind of had to create my own path. And that came through emailing, I think it was like over 100 professors at a local university. And most of them were no's. It was probably like 95 no's. So it was definitely discouraging for me to see people say like, no, I couldn't do work in their lab. But, deep down inside, I knew it wasn't because of me. I knew it was just because of the culture. And so I was persistent and I kept emailing, and eventually I got, like, I think it came down to maybe 2 or 3 yeses, and I was able to pick a lab. And I love that lab to this day, and I'm super grateful for that. But I think that that was definitely how I showed leadership, by being persistent and never ever quitting. And then kind of a general leadership thing is, I think leaders should be people that are empathetic and wanting to help others, not only help themselves. And the way I did that, similar to Neil, was through teaching. One way was, like I mentioned before, by working at the Science Center. I consistently chose to run these things called discovery carts, which is where we kind of have an experiment on wheels for visitors to come watch and learn about. So we were given a variety of opportunities, and I always signed up to do that because I love teaching people about science and just ways that we interact with it without even knowing about it. And then another way that I, demonstrated leadership, and also through teaching, was I actually taught English in Costa Rica to a very underserved community. And that was also the first time I had ever traveled internationally alone. So it was both an opportunity for me to give back to community, while also kind of discovering myself more by taking on this challenge that I didn't really think I'd be able to do at first. But it was great in the end.
So yeah, I think for me, leadership in STEM, definitely like how I mentioned before, was I'm really interested in like, in like electrical engineering in general. So for me, it was just really fun to like create, like kits and stuff for like younger students to be able to learn. It was really fun, especially because I know a lot of elementary school kids did not have exposure to that, um, which is why I really enjoyed doing it. And it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I need to like plan this like every single week, or like it was just like something that I'd like to do. Or like they would just like show up to my house one day and be like, oh, okay, sure, we can just do something together. Like it was just a very spontaneous thing, and it was just fun for me, and I just did it. Another thing I would say probably outside of STEM would be like, okay, so in my school, like the tennis courts were like really bad, like horribly maintained. And like in my area, it was just like very windy. So every time when like other schools would like come to play, it would just be like very unfair. So we had like a way to be able to like raise money in order to have like in order to place windbreakers like on our tennis courts, that would be like more fair to play. But like again, like this wasn't something that I was like, oh, I want to be a leader, so I'm going to do it, just because I wanted to do it, because like I was passionate about tennis and I wanted it to be like equal and things. So yeah.
Yeah, it's found solved a problem in your community, right? And with the community that was important to you. Let's turn it a little bit back to STS. A question I always like to ask finalists: were you surprised to be named a top 40 finalist in the Science Talent Search? Why or why not?
I was absolutely surprised. Like, it seems sort of funny to say this now, but there was a point when I considered not even, I was like going through the application and looking at all these different things. And I thought to myself, I have absolutely no chance at this. Like, I would be lucky to be named a scholar, no chance at being named a finalist, and definitely not even a thought of getting anywhere near the top 10.
And Neil's being modest, because if you aren't aware and you're watching this, he was the first place winner last year. So he is being modest.
But so I think it would actually be an understatement to say I was surprised when I was named a finalist. I was really one of the, when I think back to my kind of academic career, I think it was one of the most kind of exciting moments when I realized that I actually had made it. And it also just felt very validating, like for not just me to think my research is cool, but this panel of judges thinks my research is cool. And these judges are like foremost experts in their field. And that just felt really, really cool. And I think it's very exciting to be named a finalist, but I also think that there were plenty of impressive applications that didn't make it to finalist. And I think everybody should be just very proud of themselves for even getting here and having an application to submit, because that is big.
Yeah, and before I go into my why were you surprised, I do just want to echo Neil's last point, because I think that that's so true. Only 2,000 around last year kids were even able to submit a project in the entire country. So I just think that if you even have a project to submit, you have my respect, and I think that you should already be extremely proud of yourself. But to go into, was I surprised? I was not even expecting it. So I went to swim practice the day I knew finalists were being called, and I put my phone away and I dove into the water. And because like I didn't even expect I was going to be finalist. So I was like, there's no point to just like wait for a call that's not going to come. I might as well be practicing. So yeah, I remember getting out of the water, and then I saw this like spam call on my phone, but I went to look up the area code and it said Washington, D.C. So I was like, oh, aren't calls supposed to be like coming out like right around now? And then I called the number back, and then I don't know who it was, but they were like, oh, I can't believe you didn't pick up. And I was like, yeah, because I didn't think I was going to get it. So needless to say, I was beyond surprised. But yeah, it was an honor of a lifetime. I was just happy I had a project to submit, but it turned out to just be something that was, going to change my life. And so, yeah, to answer the question, I was super surprised.
Yeah, I was also very, very surprised. Actually, I still am surprised, I have to be completely honest. Yeah, so actually, just like how Neil said, I like think around like 2 weeks before the application was due, I wasn't gonna submit my application because I looked at all the questions and I kind of like started a couple and I was like, okay, like this is like way too much. I don't think I can do it. And then I just kind of like sat for a whole week and I did my whole application and I can't believe I submitted it in time, but I did. So yeah, I was very surprised. And then when like finalists were called, I forgot that they were being called that day. And then I got a call and it was a spam call. So I didn't respond. And then like an hour later, I was like texting my friend and she's like, oh, they're coming out today. And I was like, oh, really? So then I called them back like 2 hours and I was like, oh, okay. And I still think it took me at least like a week to like process like what happened after that. So
I feel like I should add my call story here because everyone else has. This is okay. So I was in class. I was in my stats class at Michigan, and I got this random call and it showed up as potential spam. So I rejected it. I got this call again and I rejected it again. I got it. And then I think whoever it was then called my mom, who picked up and then told me I needed to come home right after class. And then I got a call again after that, and that time I picked up. So, yeah.
All very fun stories. We like them on the other side too, for sure. All right. So all of you by now are honestly yourselves very much STS stars for us, and also just role models in general for so many young scientists. We are very curious to hear if you have met or learned about any role models as a result of your STS experience, either in STEM at large or just in your field.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. There were so many cool people at STS, many people that I'm in contact with, and many people that were just like, I don't know. Our keynote speaker, Ron Bale, for example, was even before STS, like he was one of my personal heroes. Like he discovered the protein kinesin, which, so by the way, like it's an S tier protein. But I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Yes, I absolutely met a lot of different people, and some of them were very famous in their fields, and others were some of like the speakers that came to the various dinners and kind of gave advice, but also kind of shared their stories in STEM. And it was just very interesting to me to hear how all these different people had many different paths and how they all kind of converged in this similar field, and how they all kind of got into research and into their research careers today. And I think that was very inspirational to me to kind of see how different people got there, and kind of allowed me to see the path I want to follow and where I want to be in the next, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And I think I'm immensely grateful to STS to have been able to meet all those people. And I think it's a life-changing experience.
Yeah, I think for me, some like role models and inspirations, definitely looking back, I would honestly say I have been inspired by a lot of my fellow STS finalists and even semi-finalists that I was able to talk about, and I got to hear about their projects, hear about their backgrounds. I thought that, I consider them inspirational. And as far as role models go, I have to say my old PI whose lab I worked in, and then my mentor who was a graduate student in the lab. Those have been they're two really big inspiration role models for me, just because I just think about how much time and effort that they put into helping me develop my project and to help me succeed, and that I wouldn't even be sitting here if it weren't for them. And I hope that one day, if I'm ever in a position where I can help another person who's like aspiring to be like in that field, probably STEM, that I'll do the same thing that they did, and kind of go out on a limb and really help them grow as a scientist and as a person.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Jason said. I feel like some of the biggest people that have inspired me are probably the other STS finalists that were there. Like some of the projects that I saw were like absolutely insane, and I was like, how did you? Like, it was just crazy. And like even like during like the week, like in STS, like we just had an opportunity to meet so many like amazing scientists from so many different like fields of science. And yeah, it was just very interesting to hear like their perspectives and like their experiences with STEM. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all. And it is such a great point. Your fellow finalists are, it's cool to see the leadership skills that they possess and learn from them as well. Huge role models. Just to have near peers like that is huge. My next question for you all, how has STS shaped your self-perception and your role as a future leader in STEM?
I think STS helped in multiple ways, the biggest of which being I come from my school doesn't have very much. I know there's like a lot of the big schools that are big into STEM have very much of a research culture, and you work with other students that have like it's more than one student doing research, and you have like peers to kind of work with, interact with. At my school, there is not very much of that. I did like my research was done fully separately of any program. And I thought it was very, I would say, the word I would use, I guess, would be kind of invigorating to see that there were 39 other people. And I meet 39 other people, but of course there are probably hundreds and maybe even like thousands who applied to STS. People like that who care about research and care about science just as much as I do. And that one makes me feel happy to be in the position I am, to be able to go and say that I'm going to be part of the next generation of scientists. And I'm really happy to see the group of people I'm going to be with, I'm going to be working with. And also, it's just exciting to see and kind of build a community from the beginning and see where everyone else is going and see where science as a whole will go. And I think as just a last note, being able to meet with some of the current leaders in STEM is another amazing way to see how to be a future leader, because they were able to tell us both what they're currently working on and I guess three things: what they're currently working on, what they have been working on, but for us, probably most importantly, what they intend to work on and want us to work on. And I think it's important for us to see where the current leaders are, but also understand from a very early age what the need in STEM is, so that we can kind of shape ourselves to address and adapt to those needs.
Yeah, so for me, STS has kind of helped validate the work that I spent thousands of hours on. And it really showed me that, my work means something to someone. I mean, of course, it means something to me because I'm the one doing it, but it's really nice to see that, like Neil said earlier about the panel of distinguished judges, that they also felt like my work had some value and something to bring. And so that meant a lot to me. And then I would also just say that something that I've learned as an athlete is that hard work pays off, and STS showed that that's true in another field, science, or STEM, and that, the hours that I worked in the lab, juggling multiple tasks, that all paid off in the end. And yeah, I mean, I would say that the final thing that STS has showed me is that I do have what it takes to be a future leader in STEM. I think that, just even submitting a project to STS should kind of empower you, to believe that you can do great things in the future and that you can help other people do great things in the future as well.
Yeah, for me, it was definitely STS definitely made me feel very validated, like with my research, especially because all of my research was done at home in my garage, and everything that I learned was at home. And I think the only other place that I went was to the field, which was in a landfill. But I did not work in a fancy lab. I didn't use any fancy equipment. I bought everything. And so like the fact that like I was able to, achieve something like this just by like working at home, that made me feel very validated. And it also shows that like you don't need like anything fancy or anything to achieve like a really good research project. I mean, of course, like if you do, like good job, but like in my situation, like, yeah.
Sorry, my cat's trying to say hello. Also, just all very good points. Again, thank you all so much for sharing. I think very interesting too that you all had pretty different experiences, but you all say the same thing, that it was very validating of those experiences. So again, just further proof, we hope that STS really is for everyone, and just by applying, you have very much made it and already shown that commitment. So kudos again, as always, to all of you. I know we're running up on time here, but I think since we started a little late, we're going to do a couple more questions. The next one I have for you is, how do you think interested students can really cultivate those leadership skills? We know that a lot of times it really is about having opportunity, or even just the guts to kind of stand up for something. But we bet you all have some tips in this area about how students can do that in their own lives.
Yeah, and I think going along with that, having opportunity or the guts to stand up for something is find something. What you should be a leader in is the thing you care the most about. Like find that thing that really drives you. Find something that makes you really have a reaction to it. Like find something you're so passionate about that struggling to come up with words, sorry, but I think you get the point, is that find that thing that really you have, I guess, a fire for, find and pursue that. And I think in many cases there's not always opportunity, but I think a great part of being a leader is a willingness to make opportunity for yourself. And I think if you find the thing that you care about and really push to make some sort of change, make some sort of impact in that area, I think that's one of the best ways to find leadership. And I think cultivating leadership skills is important, but it is very crucial that these leadership skills and these leadership activities be genuine and from the heart. And I think that can be achieved by being a leader in something that you're very passionate about and in something that you care a lot about, because the best leaders are the people that really care. And I think that that's probably the biggest advice I can give.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest advice I could give for trying to cultivate leadership skills would be look around at your community and ask yourself, what can I do to make the community better? Or what's a change that I want to see that will make the community better? And if you think that that's something that you can do, then likely there are other people who will want to help you do it. And so I think being a leader, it does take guts, but also it takes observation, because you have to find something that hasn't already been done that other people will also want done, and then you have to kind of lead that effort, or get a group of people to help you accomplish it. But yeah, I would say that that's the biggest advice I could give, is just pay attention to what the change you want to see and be the executor of the change.
Yeah, I would definitely say be very passionate about what you're doing. It does really show if you're not passionate. So please like choose something that you like a lot. Sorry, I was gonna say something else. It'll come back to me later, maybe.
And I think that's all really good advice. And I was smiling as you all were talking because you were all speaking from the heart, which just shows that you get it, right? And I think that's also just generally good advice for entrants working on their applications, to please speak from the heart, right? We want to meet you, not the robot version of you. One more question, kind of looking to the future, to hear your philosophy on some of this, because you are future leaders in STEM. Back to looking at the future of STEM leadership, we all believe and understand that diversity is very important. How do you think the field can become more equitable in this area? How can we be more inclusive to voices that are missing? Do you have any thoughts or takeaways for others on this call, or for goals that you have for yourself?
Yeah, and I think I've kind of touched on this, but in my opinion, a lot of the lack of diversity in STEM and a lot of the lack of diversity in just many areas in general is because we, as humans, just tend to be overly dismissive of ideas that are very different from ours. And I think this sounds kind of ridiculous, but one of the biggest ways we can be more inclusive to voices is to just force ourselves to listen and force ourselves to not disregard an idea or discount a person just because they're coming from a totally different viewpoint. And something that sounds absolutely ridiculous to us might actually be the key to something. And sometimes one person doesn't have the foresight to see everything. And I think that STEM is moving in that direction, but I still think there's just a lot of inequity in who's able to speak widely, because I think people who have already from very kind of established lineages of, I don't know, academic lineages, I guess would be the word, are far more represented than people coming from more underprivileged backgrounds or underrepresented backgrounds. And I think creating a better open forum for people to be able to express their ideas and creating a more equitable way to progress in STEM and to kind of be able to, I think a lot of the other issue is that the way in which one has to move up to STEM, because to be able to do research, you really, in most cases, have to get some sort of doctoral degree. And the pathway to getting there inherently has a lot of inequities built into the system. And I think addressing that as well and making that process more equitable is super important to increasing diversity in STEM and STEM leadership.
Yeah, I think a very important way that we can try to increase equity in STEM is, it sounds simple, but in reality, it's hard to do, is simply just looking at areas that are historically underrepresented in STEM and diverting resources to there. In my experience, that has been hard to do, even when we know that that is true, that there are, pretty big differences in the research culture of different areas. But the thing is, even if there are differences in the resource, like concentrations, I think the proportion of students interested in STEM is pretty constant. But the problem is when students that are interested in STEM realize that they're growing in an environment that isn't really conducive towards STEM, they kind of begin to lose that interest. And so I think that the biggest and most impactful way that I guess my generation or people like me can try to make this world a more equitable place is simply by making our voices heard and taking real actions, not just speaking, but I think a big thing is when you see someone else standing up for something that you're interested in, you're more likely to want to be part of that cause too. Yeah, I'm trying to look at what the other question was. Um, yeah, and then as far as like being inclusive to voices that are missing, I just think that, you know, being an analytical thinker, you kind of have to look at the picture and ask yourself, like, what's missing from this piece? Am I missing a group of people that could actually add value to, the conclusion? And I think that if you are careful about it and precise about it, you can, more representatively include people that have historically not been included. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Neil actually brought up a really great point about like listening. I just think that is like so important, and that's definitely one of like the major ways how you can actually, achieve something that's like, like very put together. And I think another thing would definitely be like, like setting examples, or like giving an opportunity for like the younger generation to see like what is possible in research, because sometimes if you don't really know what is possible, it's really hard to like think in the right direction and to actually like envision what you want to be able to do. So I definitely feel like outreach in minority groups would probably be like the best way to make the field more equitable.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. It definitely helps to know that we are in very capable hands when it comes to the future leaders ahead of us. So thank you all for those perspectives. We have one last question for you, and it's kind of a two-parter. So first, I do something we like to ask all of our finalists is, what was your favorite part or biggest takeaway from STS? But then also, as any parting words, do you have any advice for folks who are working hard on their applications right now? Any last minute advice you'd like to share with them?
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with the first part. My favorite part of STS, and I guess the biggest takeaway, was the group of people I met. And I think that's an answer you will hear from a lot of finalists, is that it was I can't really describe it in any way that would do it justice, but it was just an amazing experience to just meet these people from all over the country that cared about STEM as much as I do. And as someone who really, really cares about STEM, meeting people that share that passion, share that fire to learn, and share that drive was just an incredible experience. And I think that's the thing I remember most about STS, and that's the thing that I'm most grateful for from STS. In terms of advice, I think the biggest pieces of advice I would say are the application is daunting, like extraordinarily daunting, and I got started on it very late, partially because I kind of learned about everything late, and I really wish I had more time because it was just a lot to do at once. And I think if you can avoid getting yourself in that scenario, that would probably be a good idea, to be able to do it in pieces, look through everything that you have to do, and sort of plan out how much at a time you can do. I think another important thing is, and I think all three of us have said this quite a bit throughout the seminar today, but be genuine in your essays, be passionate. It's very easy to tell when someone is making something up, or when someone is putting something down just for no reason other than putting it down, just to check a box. And as much as people think they can hide it, it very much shows through when that is the case. Conversely, it also shows through when people really have passion. And it's very easy to tell when someone truly cares about what they do, just from the way they speak about it and from the way they write about it. And I think that's what they're looking for, is to see that you're, the whole point of STS is to look for future STEM leaders. And they want to see that you really care about STEM and you really care about the things that you do. And you're not just doing them to check a box, you're doing them because you care. And even after you're in college, after you're in, I don't know, in your professional life, and nothing from high school really matters, you still will have that drive to continue and you still will care. And then the last thing I'll say is, I think a common thing that I fell into as well is I think a lot of us have done incredible things. Like every single one of the 40 finalists have done amazing things. And it feels very wrong to kind of, I don't know, like, what's the word? Kind of just like tout your accomplishments, and it feels like you're bragging to kind of write about things. And I think part of it is you should never overrepresent what you've done, but it is important for you to convey adequately what you've done. And I think like when I was writing about my experiences, I didn't say anything about dual enrollment. And my mom was looking at it and was like, why didn't you say anything about dual enrollment? And I was like, because I don't want to brag about it. And she's like, if you don't write it, how are they going to know you even did it? So while you should never overrepresent your contributions to the research, overrepresent the amount of time or what you do in activities. But it is, on the same token, very important to be aware of how someone who knows nothing about you except for what you write on the applications will perceive what you write. And you want them to see adequately what you do, how much you do, and how much you care. And I think it can feel like you're bragging, but it really doesn't come off that way to the person on the other side who's reading your application. And I think it's important to be aware of that before you kind of submit. That's the big advice I can give you at this stage.
Yeah, so my biggest takeaway from STS was honestly just the fact that I got to meet people that were as curious and interested in discovering things about the world as I was. I think that, I was for most of my life in like an environment where it was just like, there's an emphasis on learning like textbook material and taking tests and quizzes. And now I got to meet people that, I'm sure they've also done all those same things, but they, like me, wanted to take it a step further and be the one to discover those things that maybe one day will be written about in textbooks, and like really explore these like super niche but fascinating facets of the world. And that was the first time in my life that I had ever gotten to meet that many people with such a profound passion about a very specific thing. So I would say my biggest advice, though, +1 to everything that Neil said, of course. And I would also just say that throughout this webinar, we've all talked about how surprised we were that we, even got finalists. I was surprised to even get semi-finalists. So I'd say for anybody who's like looking at the application and like, okay, this is too long, or like, there's no way that I'll be able to get semi-finalist, just know that all three of us once had the exact same thoughts, and we're only here today because we ended up clicking that submit button. And so I think that that's my biggest advice is just work hard on it, click the submit button, then go relax or do something to take your mind off. And then, the rest is out of your control.
Yeah, I would definitely say my biggest takeaway from STS would definitely be, again, meeting all the finalists, meeting all the people. It was such an incredible opportunity. And it was just like insane to see like how hard everyone worked on their projects. And I was like, wow, like, I don't know. It was pretty crazy. And then for advice on the application, just like how Neil and Jason said, like, actually, please do it. Please submit it. I promise I actually was not going to do this like maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before it was due, and I was like, I'll just do it. And I'm so glad that I did. I would also say plan a lot. Like if you want, take one whole entire week to plan every single question that you do, and then go back and then do it in small pieces. Cause like, at least for me, if I like kind of have the question like in the back of my head for a while, I'll get like more ideas like as it goes on. So planning is very important. Also like for your research as well, like do a lot of planning for that. Like I know the application looks very long, like do it. I promise it's worth it.
Awesome. Well, I'm so proud of all three of you. You've given us so much great advice today. And also, I just know you all personally to be great STEM leaders, and we really look forward to seeing what happens next for you and tackling first year of college, which is a challenge in and of itself. And I know you're probably doing a great job, and I hope it's going well. For all of our friends who have joined us today, I'm going to share our screen really quickly again before we wrap up here, just to let you screenshot this slide. This is how you can reach our team if you have any questions about your application. Our website has all sorts of information as well. And last but not least, this is how many webinars have we done over the last couple of years, Elaine? Like at least probably close to 20 at this point. So there are a lot of other great sessions just like this, a ton of resources on our on the application website as well. There's a resources tab, please check it out, but we're here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we are grateful to have you. Good luck, everyone. Bye-bye.